After he had formed his religious order, St. Francis of Assisi was filled with great zeal, and he was filled with a great desire to be a martyr for Jesus Christ. So he took some of his brothers and sailed off to India, where they hadn't heard the gospel, or they hadn't heard the gospel in a long time. They didn't know Jesus. So his mission, he thought, was to go to India, to be bold about spreading the faith of Jesus Christ, and then eventually they would reject him and kill him. So he did that. He went to India. He was bold. He proclaimed the bold truths of Jesus Christ, hoping to be killed for Jesus. The catch was that the people in India were so convinced by the gospel that they found themselves agreeing with St. Francis. At the same time, they feared their own people, so they wouldn't convert to the faith. So they were stuck in this position of believing St. Francis but not being Christians out of fear. So St. Francis said, well, this was a failure. I wanted to be a martyr, and the Lord wouldn't give it to me. And at the same time, I wanted to bring people to Jesus Christ, and he wouldn't give that to me either. A similar story. One of the priests at the seminary talks about a martyr. I don't remember his name, but he ministered to Native Americans, Indian people, North American people. And he was having a really difficult time adjusting to the culture, the lifestyle of the natives. And so he was just having this tough time, like, am I really called to be here? And one day in prayer, he was journaling, and he journaled that he realized finally that the Lord wanted to call him back to Europe. And so he was excited about this because he was excited to go home and minister to a different set of people. And as soon as he finished journaling about this, he left his tent, and there was a war going on outside, and he left his tent, and he was struck in the head with a tomahawk and died a martyr. Which is strange because the Lord had just apparently told him that, hey, you can go home. You don't have to be here anymore. Well, he went to a different home, I guess, than he was expecting. A similar note, but a much smaller scale. Last night I was sitting in the chapel in the rectory telling the Lord all about how I was going to fast all day for him today. Just kind of reviewing the week, realizing some of the failures that I had, and saying, you know, Lord, I want to repent and I want to fast all day for you. And then I got in the chapel this morning and I was looking at the Mass readings for today, and I saw that it was a feast day. The Lord didn't want me to fast today. It's funny how that works. How sometimes we're so zealous to please the Lord in certain ways, and then he says, no, that's not right. Right now, that's not how I want you to please me. I imagine that's something like what St. James and St. John were expecting. They probably didn't know what to expect when their mom approached Jesus with them and said, hey, let these two sit at your right and at your left in heaven. And Jesus said, I can't promise you that. I can't give that to you. I don't know if you're going to be there, but right now that's not what you should be looking to do. This isn't how you can glorify me right now. Don't look to the future. Live in the present. We need to approach the Lord with that same mindset. Sometimes we want to please him in great ways, and sometimes he lets us please him in those great ways. He calls us to fast on certain days. He calls us to give alms. He calls us to pray a little bit extra. But then there are those other days when we set our mind to something and there's a different turnout than we expected. The Lord is telling us, hey, you can glorify the Father in a different way today. So to always approach the Lord with that open mindset. Whatever we choose to do it full board like St. Francis did. But then, when the turnout is a little different than we expect, to rejoice in that too. Rejoice in the opportunity to be loved by God in different ways. Because that's ultimately what we ought to desire. Ultimately, what we ought to desire is to live as God desires us. For our prayer to become like Jesus when he was in the garden, not my will, Lord, but your will be done.